Hey, welcome back to another episode of the devotional portion of the blog. So, the readings for today are Psalm 18, Exodus 16, 10 to 22, 1 Peter 2, 11 to 25, and John 15, 12 to 27. It's that passage from 1 Peter I'd like to focus on for this installment, but I'm going to have to keep it small. I started taking notes on this, and I kept just kind of getting deeper and deeper and deeper. I kept seeing more and more and more, and I can't get it all out of my system in one 5 or 6 minute meditation. So um, I'm just going to kind of keep it short here for a minute. The passage is, I'm actually going to take the time to read it from First Peter. I think it's kind of important and relevant here. So, dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God in the day he visits us. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether emperor as the supreme authority or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and commend those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people. Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. Honor the emperor. Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. For it is commendable if someone bears up under the pain of unjust suffering because they are conscious of God. But how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? If you suffer for good and you endure it, this is commendable for God before God. To these things you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his footsteps. He committed no sin, no deceit was found in his mouth. And when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed, for you were like sheep going astray, but now you have returned to the shepherd and the overseer of your souls. I've heard these stories lately about government officials taking extreme positions when it comes to gatherings of Christians during this current season of COVID isolation and social distancing. And I've seen stories about preachers being arrested, stories about people putting nails in the driveways of churches to prevent them from gathering, stories about license plate numbers being taken down and people being fined for these gatherings, stories about all sorts of prohibitions being placed on gatherings, even the so-called drive-in worship services. So on the one hand, I'm not really sure what to make of it. You know, my church, we've canceled pretty much any gathering, like all gatherings, but we still find time to, use the technology available to us, YouTube or Zoom, phone calls, emails, text messaging. We still communicate together as the people of God. On the other hand, I haven't heard too many stories about gatherings of other religious peoples being canceled or threatened. So I didn't hear any stories about people putting the nails down in driveways of a mosque. So do that what you want with that information, but I haven't heard those stories. And make no mistake, though, I think that the real issue here is that Christians are a problem in this world, aren't we? And I don't think that we should be the type, really, who think otherwise. And what I mean is that Christians, by and large, we're not welcome in this world. I mean, I know in America we've got a cushy life, but we're not welcome in the world. The world is not the friend of the church. We might think that, but I wonder if we've really read the Bible recently here in America and considered what it actually says about the life of the Christian. You just think about this passage again, read through it again slowly. Notice all the stuff that Peter says about the world that we live in. He says that we're far distant. We live as exiles. We live as foreigners in our own lands. There's pagans who lie and misrepresent us and misrepresent our intentions. We live under human authority, and that human authority, it goes with the wind. Um, and even though that they're charged with, rewarding, the righteous and punishing the wicked, uh, we live under an authority where they do things like write down license plates on Easter Sunday and, turn them in for law enforcement. Um, our leaders, our emperors, governors, I think the word there is despot, tyrants. We live among ignorant and foolish people who run their gums about things that they don't understand in their attempts to get us in trouble and to make us out to be something that we're not. Um, you hear the things they say. Oh, you're anti-science and you're anti-this and you're anti-that, which is you're anti-education because you want to homeschool your kids instead of sending them to the public school to be brainwashed or indoctrinated. Yeah, yeah, we're the problem. But we live among these type of people. Not everybody's like that. But the other thing it says in there too is that they're going to make slaves of us. They'll enslave you, is what he says. That's why Peter has to give these instructions, because he's not endorsing slavery, but he is saying that this is a reality. Back then, even through our present day, there are slaves in the world, and here we are. That is our lot in the world. Not all of us experience every one of these symptoms. Not everyone is going to be a slave. Not everyone is going to be accused of doing wrong when we were not doing wrong. Not everyone's going to be thrown in jail or slandered, but many will. That's the world we inhabit. We are strangers. We are aliens. In our other reading for today, Jesus said it this way in John 15. He said, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. But as it is, you do not belong to the world, but you have been chosen out of the world. I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you. A servant's not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you." Peter said the same thing. If you want to know how the world will treat you, if you want to know how the world is going to look at you, if you want to know how the world understands you, if you want to know what to expect, if you want to understand the forces that you're up against, look at how the world treated Jesus. Jesus didn't do anything wrong, but to this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, no deceit was found in his mouth. When they hurled their insults at him, he didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. And he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross. Yeah, that's right. The world killed him. And again, John 15, as it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. And this is what to fulfill what was written in the law. They hated me without reason. The world doesn't even need a reason to hate. The simple fact that we are aligned with Jesus is enough. I got a lot more to say about this, and I think maybe I'll do maybe a part 2 of this tomorrow. Because it's not always as negative as it sounds. But I want to conclude with a little thought here from Scott McKnight, his book Kingdom Conspiracy. He said, Roman politics is about power and domination and might and force and coercion and the sword. The politics of Jesus is about sacrificial love for the other, even if that means death from the sword. Lording it over others is the way of Rome. Serving others is the way of Jesus. The lords of the empire are for Jesus, lordless lords. These are two stories at work in two politics, and the politics of Jesus counters the politics of Rome. That is where we live. That is the context of our day. That is what Christians in America need to remember, because the enemy is on the move. And the enemy is not flesh and blood. But you think about where we are right now and how some governors are using COVID as an excuse to keep people from gathering together to worship. You think about it. Ask yourself, think about it. How, in light of this, am I going to conduct myself as a Christian? We're exiles, but by the time we get to the end, Peter says that we're under the watchful care of our overseer of our souls and the shepherd. How then are we going to conduct ourselves right now, right here, right now, today, in this foreign land that we've been exiled to? Think about it and answer the question. Think about it. I'll have more to say about this tomorrow. Thanks for stopping by. Peace.